Hey, welcome back. Today I made cinnamon rolls, but there's wheat in it. I loosely adapted this recipe from Joy Food Sunshine, so I'll leave that link in the description if you want to check it out, and I'll show you how I made 6 cinnamon rolls with about 35 milligrams each. I started off by weighing out my wheat. I'm weighing out just over 2 grams, and here is the equation I'm using for dosing. Next, I set my oven to 240, and while that is preheating, I'm going to start breaking up my wheat. You'll notice I'm just breaking the nugs into smaller pieces rather than grinding it, and that is to help the wheat flavor be a little bit less potent in our final product. When the oven is ready, you want to stick your wheat in for about 35 minutes, and while that's decarbing, you'll start melting down your butter. The recipe only calls for 3 tablespoons of butter, so I'm using a little bit more water than I normally would just to help keep the wheat off the bottom of the pan. I'm going to melt these on low as usual. I'm trying to get this butter up to a steady about 185 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit before I add in my wheat. Once I add my wheat, I'm cooking it for about 2.5 to 3 hours, stirring every 30 minutes or so, and I do want to be regularly checking that it's staying in that 185 to 200 degree range throughout the entirety of the cooking process. When it's finished cooking, you'll just strain out your wheat. You can see a tiny layer of butter starting to form on top of that water. To help that layer harden a little bit quicker, I just put a lid on this and stick it into my fridge for about 2 or 3 hours. When my can of butter hardened, I pulled it off to weigh it and see how much I'll have to use in my recipe. I came up just under 3 tablespoons, so I will need to add a little bit of regular butter to the recipe. Next, I got started on my dough, so I put half a cup of warm milk and 2 teaspoons of sugar into a bowl and gave that a mix. Then I add in 2 teaspoons or 1 packet of active dry yeast. This will need about 5 or 10 minutes to activate, so while we are waiting on that, I'm going to start working on melting down my can of butter. This recipe does call for melted butter, but please do not ever microwave your can of butter. I recommend using a double boiler method like you see here. So I just brought a little bit of water to a boil in a saucepan and then put a glass bowl on top with the can of butter in it. And it does melt very quickly, so you don't have to wait too long. When our yeast has activated, we're going to add in our other liquid ingredients. So starting with 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and our can of butter. We're also going to add in 1/4 cup of sugar to this and then mix that all together. Next, we'll mix together our dry ingredients, which is just 2 1/4 cups of flour and half a teaspoon of salt. Lastly, we'll just mix our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients until they're fully incorporated. I am using a spatula to do this, but if you have a mixer with a bread hook attachment, feel free to use that. Eventually, a cohesive sticky dough will form, and when that does happen, you'll just want to roll it out onto a floured surface and knead it very lightly with your hands. We're just trying to activate the gluten with the kneading, so no need to do it too much, but you don't want to skip out on this step. When we're finished, we'll just transfer that into a lightly greased bowl and cover it with some plastic wrap, and then you just want to leave it to rise for about an hour or an hour and a half. In the meantime, I'm making my cinnamon filling, so starting with 6 tablespoons of butter, I'm just going to cream that until it is light and fluffy. To that, I'm adding half a cup plus 2 additional tablespoons of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. I used a whisk to cream this together to make sure that it would be light and fluffy and easy to spread onto my dough. When my dough has just about doubled in size, it is ready to be worked again, so I am just putting it onto a floured surface and rolling it out with a rolling pin. To help me get a good rectangular shape for my dough, I like to fold down the edges like you see here, and then I just roll it out until it is about 1/4 of an inch thick all the way across the dough. Next, we add on our cinnamon sugar mixture, so we're just spreading that all over our dough, and I cannot stress this enough, please don't skip the edges. Those 2 cinnamon rolls on either end will thank you later. Finally, we roll them up. You can't really tell, but I am pressing it and pulling the dough back a little bit. I just want to make sure I'm rolling these as tightly as possible so that they don't come unraveled during the next rising process and the baking process. Then you'll cut this into 6 even rolls. You should definitely measure this so your rolls are the same size. I don't know why I didn't do that, freaking rookie. But anyway, then you move it into a pan. I covered mine with saran wrap and let it rise for about another hour until they were a little bit thicker, a little bit chubbier, and looked about like this. Next, we'll preheat our oven to 350, and when that is ready to go, we'll bake our cinnamon rolls for about 20 to 25 minutes, or until they are nice and brown on top. Here mine are right out of the oven, and you might have guessed that our very last step is to make the icing to put on top of these. So our basis for this icing is going to be powdered sugar, vanilla, and milk. And you'll notice that I put 1 to 2 cups and 2 to 4 tablespoons. That's because you just want to mix these ingredients in kind of various amounts until you're getting the consistency of icing that you like. So I added a little bit more milk to see how that went, and then I decided I wanted it a bit thicker, so I added a bit more powdered sugar. So just keep doing that until you reach a consistency that you're pleased with. Then just drizzle that onto your cinnamon rolls. You can add as much as you would like to. Clearly, I like a lot. And that is it. They are ready to go. Like I said, these should be about 35 milligrams, but with homemade edibles, it is hard to tell, so just eat half and wait a while if you need to. And keep in mind that edibles can take 2 to 3 hours to fully kick in. If you make these at home, I would love to see pictures. You can find me on Instagram. Let me know what you thought of this video, and as always, thanks for watching.